answers we didn't ask, and then we'll go to question and answer.
No problem. Well, good evening. Nice to meet you all. I'm usually introduce myself, walk around, and shake everyone's hands, but it's kind of I know we're on a time schedule. But my name's Jim Napolitano. I am running for Precinct 1 Constable here in Montgomery County. I have a long background of law enforcement, but before that, my education was in mechanical engineering, and I worked in the oil field for a while, and got laid off a few times. Found out that I needed to move on to something else. So actually I was working as a reserve deputy at Montgomery County. They put me on full-time for a little bit, and in 1986 I was hired by the U.S. Secret Service. I spent 22 years, 3 months, 3 days at the Secret Service. Yeah. You know, it's funny, you laugh, it's you just, because you know exactly what we call an EOD day, the day you arrived. So all the guys know exactly when, and the ladies when they got there and what they do. So at the Secret Service was I have to say, an education like you wouldn't believe. And after the academy, I found out that you do a lot of things, and you do a lot of different jobs. It's not the same job over and over again every day, but you move from place to place. So after the first 6 years, do any of y'all really know what the Secret Service does? Besides protect the president?
Counterfeiting.
It's a secret.
Counterfeiting, fraud, forgery, all the violations that are identity theft are all investigated by the local Secret Service office here. Sometimes the U.S. Attorney will give them a threshold of $10,000 or more in a violation. So when we found that we couldn't meet that threshold, we worked with the local and state prosecutors to get our criminals prosecuted in the system. So I would say that probably 70% of the criminals that I arrested here in Montgomery County and Harris County and so on and so forth in the South Texas area during the late 80s and early 90s were state cases that we did because the U.S. Attorney wouldn't take it. 1 minute left. So my education, my background in Secret Service, and the things that I did there, I thought I would bring my time and bring it to the constable's office to give the men and women of the constable's office what I think would be a great opportunity for me to teach them, for me to learn from them on what they're doing, and be able to bring my experience to the county. And I've been an instructor. I spent 3 years as an instructor at the U.S. Secret Service Academy, and I thought that was some of the best time that I ever spent with the students and giving them my experience after being on the President's detail and the former President's detail and so on and so forth. So that's what I'm here to do.
Okay.
Okay.
That is the first question. I saw a finger over there, and I see 5. Yes, ma'am.
I always have a question. Okay, I may have missed it, but what made you came in late, with all this redistricting and stuff, so your application came in late. Why were you late, and what made you run?
Well, first of all, I take a little bit back. Well, I wasn't late. Late means that I wasn't on time for the first one. But what happened was, I have a small business in Houston. Actually, we started in Montgomery County. My wife's in the back. Her and I started our own business. And I was approached by a lot of people, both civilian and law enforcement, to ask me, would I run for this constable's position? And I said, well, I can't run. And they said, well, you can, because once redistricting finishes, they have to open it up again for filing for this job. And I said, and we had a lot of long discussions. And when these guys finally pointed out the things that were happening here in Montgomery County, and I've been around here a long time, and the things that I feel that sometimes need to be changed, I thought I would take my chance, run, and see if I could start putting a wedge into some of the people that have been here for a long, long time and don't seem to move around too much.
Okay, next question. Mr. Crum?
Can you ask your FEMA question?
I've been drafted. In 2005, there were peace officers taking weapons from citizens on their own property that were not indicted or accused of a crime in any way or were not under arrest. Would you consider it a lawful order, and would you carry out orders to disarm people that were on their own property and not accused of any crime?
No, would never do that. I would never ask a citizen to give up their firearm if they're in legal possession of it. on their own property.
Not even
protecting
under a
themselves.
state of emergency?
Even in, during a state, now, let me take that back. If the federal government comes in here and it says there's a state of emergency because of armed insurrection, that's a different story.
So in the case of FEMA, where it wasn't armed insurrection, it was FEMA coming
I
in
know,
saying,
I was a rescue swimmer at the Secret Service office here in Houston. We all geared up because they needed rescue swimmers. I got all the way to Baton Rouge and they told us, we don't need you guys, turn around and go home. The situation with FEMA and the local law enforcement there in New Orleans and the local parishes was standard, who's in charge? And that's one of the things that I would like to bring to Montgomery County is understanding a command structure for when situations happen like that, where you need to have a definite central command structure, incident commanders and so on.
So what is the constitutional command structure in that situation, between the federal government and the state government?
Actually, the state government. Because, again, that's why when people complain that President Bush didn't show up, it's because he wasn't in charge of that yet. The governor of that state is in charge of that state. And then it filters down to the mayor and then the local officials there. So the state of Louisiana's governor, she was the one who told me to go home.
so in the recent fires in Magnolia, where FEMA came in and put it out, was that a good thing that they came in or a bad thing?
You know what, you're asking me to answer a question. I didn't know that FEMA was actually there to do
Okay.
that, but FEMA is, again, one of those federal government structures that I think is a bit out of control. That it grew to be bigger than what it should have been. It stays, I'll have to say from the Secret Service is a very small group. We did our job and we did it well, and I ask how many times have you ever heard, other than us doing protection, you hear stories about the Secret Service. You hear time's up. You hear about FEMA all the time, unfortunately.
Quick follow
Thank you.
on to one of those previous questions. If you want to introduce a command structure, integrated command structure for the county, it seems to me you'd be running for sheriff and not constable. Could you comment on that?
Why I didn't run for sheriff, basically?
Well, if that's one of your goals.
Well, one of my goals would maybe eventually run for sheriff, but I don't think I was ready to run for sheriff yet because I don't have the name recognition, or, most people don't even know, and I was a little late running for it because I was truly a businessman doing my business when I was approached by other people and other citizens and said, would you please get involved in this? Would you please bring what you have and what you've been doing? I kind of feel like I worked for the sheriff's office, I lived here in Montgomery County, I went and did what the government asked me to do for 20-something years, go jump out of helicopters, go do this, go do that. And then I came back and I still see the same guys in office here when I left. And I thought, wow, how long does this go on for? Is it a dynasty? So, here I am saying, I'm gonna take my chance. I'm just a citizen just like the rest of you guys, and I just said, you know what, it's time. So if I start with the constable's office, I think that that's my way to wedge in. If you like what I do with the constable's office, then maybe I'll move on to the sheriff's office. But for right now, I think that I need to bite off what I can chew, sir.
Okay, well, that's the next question. How about Lida Joe? She hasn't had many opportunities.
If the president stated that it was martial law, declared martial law, bypassing Congress, declared martial law, would you confiscate the guns?
Probably, well, the president would have to send federal agents in here. I wouldn't, as a local law enforcement officer, do that.
Nor would you tell your officers to do it?
No, ma'am. I would just tell them to stand down. If the feds come in and go do something, let them go. I mean, I'm not gonna start a war with the federal government.
It would trump state law then, would it?
Yes, ma'am, it sure would. But he would have to declare that it is a crisis situation. And you're getting into a lot of places where I don't think we're
You
ready to.
don't want any good crisis to go to waste.
The problem is we're headed there whether you're ready or not.
I know that.
Okay, Ms. Murdoch.
Well, you mentioned in the beginning that there were some things that you wanted to change, that you noticed that you knew that needed to change. So what are those?
Well, first of all, I definitely believe in term limitations. That an office like the sheriff, like the constable, like a lot of our judges, maximum 3 terms, maximum ever. I mean, we give our president 2 terms, but some of these other offices, I think 3 terms would be great. But after that, it's time to move on. I mean, even the Secret Service didn't leave you in an office for more than 5 or 6 years, you know. I started out in the field office here, I went to the Bush detail, then I went to the President's detail, and inside the President's detail, you have 3 different things that you go do. We call it a satellite, so I started out on the shift, then I became a counter assault team member, and then I went back to the shift with more things. How much experience and how much, I'll just give you an example. When you sit in a pool and there's lifeguards around the pool, what do? They change positions. Why do they change positions? Because they become complacent if they sit there long enough. They'll start to daydream and they won't pay attention to what they're supposed to be doing. I believe that politicians are the exact same way. I believe they sit there and go, oh, you know what? I've got it. And these people are gonna vote for me no matter what I do. So that's how I feel about that.
Yes. You have some very impressive experience and depth of knowledge. How would you apply that to local neighborhoods, policing, visibility of police, and patrolling local neighborhoods?
I'll give you a prime example. I'll ask everybody here. When was the last time you really had a good discussion with a police officer? Just in passing. You don't know him, never saw him before a day in your life, you see the patrol car, how are you doing today? And most of the time you get back that look. Why? Why are they acting that way? What's their anger? I can't quite figure this out, and I watch it down in Houston a lot. You know, you get pulled over, they bash your windows out, get out of the car, they stick a gun in your face. It's out of control. And it's out of control because they're not being led properly. They're not being led properly to tell them, hey, you need to change your attitude, because if you're angry all the time and you're bringing that to work, you don't need to be having a badge and a gun out there. You need to be making these decisions with a calm, cool, collective mind. And I'll tell you, that came from my training. Luckily, as a counter-assault team member, I trained with the Delta Force. Actually, now one of my partners in my business is the former commander of Delta. And I learned from the best professionals how to act professional, no matter what the stress is on you at the time. So when you're under a major amount of stress, is to stay as calm as can be, to say, you know what happens when you get stressed out? You get television. We start to do this. So that's what I want to bring to these young men and these young women. You need to understand that when stress happens, step back, take a good look at it, and don't overreact, because if you do, it only leads to someone getting hurt. So, did that answer your question?
Not where I was going, but
Okay, where were you going?
would you have your cars, let me make it brief because other people have questions.
Okay.
Would you have your patrol cars going through the neighborhood at slow speeds, windows down so they can hear what's going on? Actually be part of the community as opposed to just a car that goes flying down the highway once in a while?
You know, learning how to do community policing, again, is another thing. Actually, I'd like to have them out on bicycles. Because there's no better way than having face-to-face with the citizens. Put them in a neighborhood like Cape Conroe or Point Aquarius or someplace like that. They drive their patrol car up there, they get out, they get their bike, and off they go.
Okay, well, we obviously have more questions, and unfortunately,
No more time, sorry.
But we do thank you, we are very
Thank you.
appreciative of you taking the time out of your schedule.